This morning we learned that in February our economy lost an additional 36,000 jobs. Now this is actually better than expected.
It may be better than expected, but the economy is still losing jobs, and this president is eager to start telling a different story.
And he'd love to sign a jobs bill to boot. Top Line starts right now.
Hello and welcome to ABCNews.com's Top Line. I'm David Challey.
And I'm Rick Klein.
Each weekday we're bringing you the very latest political headlines, reporting, insight, analysis, everything you need and want to know about politics.
And it's twitter.com/thenote if you want to answer our question of the day or let us know what you think.
Get us started. What is your top line to round out the week?
Very bad week. Democrats put an exclamation point on their very, very difficult week with the retirement announcement of Bill Delahunt in Massachusetts, a veteran congressman there, maybe another potential Republican opportunity. It has been just an avalanche. Primary challenges, ethical controversies, people stepping down, retirements, resignations. It is just a very difficult week. Democrats are just saying, thank God it's Friday.
No doubt about that. Reversing course. That is what the administration seems poised to do on the Khalid Sheikh Mohammed trial. Looks like we may be heading into a military tribunal. The writing's been on the wall for this for quite some time, but reports about this possibly affecting a deal to get Gitmo closed is the fascinating twist here, Rick. But this was a politically untenable situation for them from the get-go.
Yeah, it was difficult from the start, and they've been working with Lindsey Graham. They think they've got an ally potentially on closing Gitmo, but that's not necessarily a done deal. It's not like you're able to just reverse yourself on this and make Gitmo happen. It's going to be difficult to get any of it done still. What can Brown do? We begin to see today as Scott Brown, that newly elected senator from Massachusetts, heads to Arizona to campaign with Senator John McCain. We're seeing the first glimpse of one person is likely to be a very popular figure on the 2010 campaign trail. And we're also seeing John McCain clearly signaling he is not taking anything for granted in this primary race against J.D. Hayworth.
The latest celebrity candidate to walk through there. And PATERSON plummets. A new Quinnipiac University poll out today shows an unbelievable drop of about 20 points when you ask New Yorkers if Governor David Paterson should continue to serve as the chief executive of the Empire State. You just saw the numbers slide this week, and yet he's still not going anywhere. You did have Al Sharpton gather black elected officials last night up in Harlem, and the governor comes out of that meeting, he wasn't at the meeting, but they came out of that meeting still supporting the governor. So he still has some things to hang on to here, and he seems to be hanging on to them. But my God, if the public really starts eroding like this, I don't know who he's serving.
At this point, it's all in his head. There is nothing else that can be done. All of the public and private cajoling and negotiations can be what they are. It's just going to be up to Governor Paterson what he wants to do.
We begin today with the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, the former governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Tim Kaine, Democrat, who joins us from Richmond today. Governor Kaine, thank you very much for being here. Let's take a look at this.
Great to be with you guys. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's take a look at this week for your party overall. Listen, we all know, and you've talked about it, 2010 is shaping up to be a very tough year for you guys. You knew that going into it. There's no doubt about that. But you get through a week like this. Charlie Rangel on ethics. Eric Massa, freshman Democrat from a vulnerable district, having an ethics investigation and stepping down, he claims, because of his health. You lose a retirement with Bill Delahunt up in Massachusetts. Clearly, healthcare is not yet wrapped up. You have all these things that are sort of out there. You had Nancy Pelosi in 06 saying we're going to drain the swamp. You had Barack Obama in 08 saying we were going to do business in a different way here. And yet, there's something about this week for you guys that looks like old-style Washington. Isn't that a problem for you?
Well, you never want to see anybody have challenges in public life. I'm very sensitive to that, having served 16 years in elected office. But I think folks were asking me about the 05-06 analogy, and I really don't think it holds. What we were seeing back then was a series of scandals that were sort of national in implication, with the DeLay and Abrahoff and the Foley scandals that were linking in tons of folks. It is going to be a tough year for us, but look, we're going to get health care done. The American public is going to see that immediately a whole series of things will happen. Protections against insurance company abuses, seniors getting support for prescription drug purchases, small businesses getting the ability to, through tax credits, to finally afford insurance, and parents can keep their kids on the policies till they're 27, not 21. When that goes into effect, and it will soon, I think people will see this was a huge reform. I think that's going to give us some tailwind, and we got a lot of work to do between now and November, but there's good news every day too. Good news about recent arrests of key Taliban leaders because of the U.S. doing smart diplomacy with Pakistan finally. And so the president is governing in a very challenging time, but I think the success story is going to build block by block, and will surprise some people.
Mr. Chairman, President Obama said earlier this week that he wasn't sure about the politics of health care. He said this is about doing the right thing for the country.
Right.
Are you more certain about the politics of health care, or do you know where the politics of health care break down when you get into district by district races?
My gut is telling me that the politics of getting a health bill done are good for two reasons. First, because there are immediate deliverables. And once the bill is done and seniors start to get assistance on prescription drug purchases, and parents, I've got 3 teenagers. Being able to keep my kids on my policy till I'm 27, not 21, is a huge gain for virtually every parent who's wrestling with that. Once people see the benefits and then they realize that, hey, wait, I don't see death panels, lurking at the door, and I don't see rationing going on. Once they see that the bogeyman arguments that the other guy created are non-existent, that will help. The second thing that's going to be helpful, though, is kind of a bigger tone issue. There's a lot of folks who feel like Washington's broken and can't do the big things, that it just gets bogged down, and even on the small things it gets bogged down. But this health reform has been something that 7 presidents have tried. None have been able to even get a bill through a single committee. I think the passage of a meaningful reform that will do good for the American citizens will make people feel like, hey, they can do some heavy lifting. They are doing some heavy lifting to help us, and I think that's going to create some positive effect as well.
You heard the president this week, Governor. He said, this really is the final push. And now you saw him bringing in some members into the White House yesterday, some of the more liberal, progressive members. This is really the point at which Speaker Pelosi and the president target certain folks, get them into the Oval Office, do a little of that arm twisting to really try to make the sale on health care reform. What is the DNC and Organizing for America able to do to help some of those no votes become yes votes? How do you support that member by member targeting to get the 217 you need?
Well, we did it over the summer. We did intense activity by our volunteers all over the United States, doing more than 25,000 events in every House district. And we really do believe that those events and then the communication, phone, letter, go to district members' offices had a significant effect in helping, maybe get some votes our way, but also telling some people who were uncertain, hey, look, if you vote for this, there will be folks who will be behind you. That's what we really view this communication as doing.
And are you doing that again in this crunch time period, sir?
We're absolutely going to do it again. We're working with the, with the leadership and with the White House to determine exactly how to do it to have the maximum effect. But what we really want to do is just convince members, look, if you do this reform, the individual elements of this plan are all popular with the American public. If you ask them generally about the plan, they've got more questions because the other side has thrown so much dust up in the air. When we make this happen and people immediately see the benefits that are going to come their way, I think this is going to be a great thing politically for the Dems, and we're trying to show members that they've got their constituents behind them if they vote with the president.
You mentioned the other side throwing up dust. Republicans look at this whole equation. They say, look, Democrats have the votes. They've got 59 votes still in the Senate. They have a 40-seat majority in the House. If this fails, it's because of Democrats. Is that a fair characterization?
Well, they're going to always have to explain their own, obstructionism, the way they use obstructionism, and then we found out this week in some of their fundraising materials, obstructionism and fear seem to be their 2 motivators. They're going to have to answer to the voters for that. I don't think the voters are going to reward it. I think the voters want people working to do the heavy lifting now so that we can turn the economy around and, get the nation back on the path it needs to be on. So I don't think they're going to be able to just skate away from taking an irresponsible tack and refusing to govern. But it is the case that it is on the, if they're going to stand on the sidelines and say no and throw rocks, it's on the Democrats to govern right now. We've turned an economy that was losing 750,000 jobs a month into one where the job losses are near net. The unemployment rate, most thought it would go back up this month. It stayed even. We're doing that on our own. They're not helping us. We're going to reform the health system on our own. They're not helping us. The burden of governing is on our shoulders, and we're doing it, and they're going to have to answer for standing on the sidelines and throwing rocks.
Mr. Chairman, I assume you were one of the Democrats here in Washington who breathed a big sigh of relief when David PATERSON, the governor of New York, announced last week that he was not going to seek re-election. Can he still effectively serve as the chief executive of New York State right now?
Well, here is the challenge, and I heard your guys lead in on this, and it is something that only he can resolve. If he had, 2 years left in his term, that would be one thing. But he's got less than a year left in his term in the midst of a legislative session, in the midst of a terribly difficult budgetary process with a lieutenant governor who is unknown to huge chunks of the New York populace. So the question is, even if folks are concerned about him, and I do respect the decision not to run again, do you want somebody who is unknown and and possibly untried coming into the midst of this very difficult budget situation for what is admittedly a very short-term window of trying to work with the legislature to do New York's public business. That is something that I think only Governor Patterson can resolve.
Very briefly, in our last 30 seconds here, you mentioned the fundraising document. What should RNC Chairman Michael Steele be doing in response to that document that leaked out earlier this week?
Well, he needs to clean up his team, the kind of, the kind of scurrilous references and really, immature and kind of outrageous characterizations of the president, of the speaker, of Leader Reid really don't have any place. It's one thing to disagree on ideas, and sometimes, that can be robust, but these were immature. So he needs to clean house over there and let some people go, unless he thinks it's fine, and he ought to say that too. But second, the thing about the materials that I thought were the most outrageous were not the characterizations of the Democrats. It was the way the Republicans talked about their own donors. They talked about their wealthy donors as primarily driven by ego, and they described their low-dollar donors as reactionary and said that the way to get money out of their pockets is to play on their fears. If I were a donor to the Republican Party and I saw that that's the way the leaders of the party were referring to me, I'd become at least an independent very fast.
Governor Tim Kaine of Virginia, former governor, chairman of the DNC, thank you very much for being here today, sir.
Great to be with you guys. Thanks.
We appreciate it.